Parisian apartment aesthetic: how 18th century paint colors transform small spaces. Let me begin with a confession. For years, I believed what every decorating magazine told me, that small rooms need light walls. White walls, off-white walls, pale gray walls, walls that disappear. And then I walked into a small Paris apartment painted in a deep, warm ochre, a color that had been on the walls, unchanged, since approximately 1780. And the room was the most beautiful, most spacious-feeling small space I'd ever been in. Not despite the dark color. Because of it, that afternoon changed how I understood paint entirely. And it is what we are going to talk about today. Something remarkable is happening in interior design right now. After years of white walls, pale gray walls, and what one designer recently called the epidemic of the inoffensive neutral, there is a collective turning back toward color, toward depth, toward walls that actually mean something when you look at them. Interior designers are speaking of a collective fatigue with white walls, that white often feels cold, sterile, and lacking soul for everyday living. The colors of 18th century Paris, ochre, Boiserie green, Grisaille gray, Trianon blue, and warm ivory, are precisely the colors that 2026 is reaching for. Not because they are fashionable, but because they are right. And they've been right for nearly 300 years. Paris is the right place to study this question because Paris never stopped using these colors. While the English-speaking world went through its gray phase, its grayish phase, its white everything phase, the Parisian apartment quietly continued painting its walls in the colors that its craftsmen had been mixing since the reign of Louis XV. Walk through the 6th or 7th arrondissement today, and you will find apartment interiors, sometimes belonging to families who have lived in the same space for 4 or 5 generations, where the wall color has not been changed since the Belle Époque. Not because the occupants are lazy, but because they understand something that we are only now remembering: a right color, once found, does not need to be replaced. The 18th century in France, specifically the era of the Rococo, from approximately 1730 to 1790, developed a color philosophy that was genuinely revolutionary. Previous European interior color had been about statement and power. The deep reds and golds of the Louis XIV court, the dark oak paneling of the Tudor house, the white marble of the Italian palazzo. The 18th century French interior did something new. It used color to make a room feel inhabited rather than impressive. The colors were softer, more complex, more responsive to natural light. They changed between morning and afternoon. They looked different by candlelight than by daylight. They were, in a word, alive. And that aliveness is exactly what a small apartment needs most. Over the course of this video, we are going to examine 5 specific colors of 18th century Parisian interiors. Each one has a history, a spatial logic, and a specific modern application for a compact apartment. They are the Great Ochre, sometimes called Or de Paris, Paris gold; the Boiserie green, the paneling color that defines the French Salon; the Grisaille, the gray that is not gray; the Trianon blue, named for the Petit Trianon at Versailles; and the warm Ivory, more complex and more beautiful than any white its modernity attempts to replace it with. These are not period curiosities. They are, in the words of a leading color expert speaking just last month, colors that stay modern and up to date forever. They become part of us. The first color, Or de Paris, Paris gold. A warm, deep ochre. Not the bright yellow of a sunflower, and not the flat tan of a sand dune. Something in between, with a complexity that no single adjective can adequately describe. It is the color of old stone at golden hour. The color of aged beeswax. The color of a room that has been loved and used and lived in for 200 years without anyone ever feeling the need to repaint it. In the 18th century, this color was produced from natural ochre pigment, iron oxide mixed with chalk and linseed oil, and it was the most common wall color in bourgeois Parisian interiors. Its warmth was not decorative, it was functional. In a city where natural light was limited and candles were the primary evening light source, a warm ochre wall reflected candlelight back into the room with a richness that no cool wall color could produce. The second color is the one that most people associate, consciously or not, with the idea of a French interior. Boiserie green. Named for the Boiserie, the carved wooden paneling that lined the walls of 18th century French salons. This color is a gray-green of remarkable complexity. It is not the sage green that has dominated interior design for the past several years, which tends toward the blue-gray. Boiserie green has warmth in it, a hint of yellow ochre in the base, a slight dustiness in the surface tone, a quality that the French describe as patinated, as if the color itself has aged gracefully. In a small apartment, this color does something that no other green quite manages. It makes the room feel simultaneously larger and more intimate. The walls recede without disappearing. The room breathes without emptying. The third color is the most misunderstood, and the most important for anyone who has been living with a cool modern gray and wondering why it has never felt quite right. Grisaille, literally translated as painted in grays, a technique of monochromatic painting in tonal gradations. But as a wall color, Grisaille describes a specific quality of gray that 18th century French craftsmen understood and that most modern paint brands have never quite replicated: a warm gray. A gray that has cream in it, or a very faint ochre, or the lightest possible whisper of lavender. A gray that changes dramatically between morning light and evening candlelight, appearing almost white at noon and almost beige by evening. In a small apartment with limited natural light, this is not a small detail. It is the quality that makes the difference between a gray room that feels like a waiting room and a gray room that feels like Paris. The fourth color has a specific origin story, and I think it is worth telling. The Petit Trianon at Versailles, the small private chateau that Louis XVI gave to Marie-Antoinette as her personal retreat, was decorated in the late 1770s with a specific shade of blue-gray. Not the deep royal blue of formal French interiors. Something softer, more private, more personal. A blue that was almost gray in certain lights and almost green in others, with a quality that the 18th century called celadone, the color of old Chinese porcelain. This color, which we now call Trianon blue, was Marie-Antoinette's deliberate rejection of the grand imposing colors of the formal court. She wanted a small intimate space that felt, for the first time, like it belonged to her. In a small apartment, that intention, color chosen not for effect but for belonging, is exactly the right one. fifth color is the one that looks simplest and is in fact the most complex. Warm ivory. This is not white. I cannot say this strongly enough. The 18th century French interior did not use white walls. It used ivory, a white so warm that in some light conditions it appears slightly yellow, in others slightly cream, in others almost the palest possible gold. The difference between a warm ivory wall and a white wall is the difference between a room that feels like it belongs to someone and a room that feels like it is waiting for someone to arrive. In a small apartment, this difference is particularly acute. A white wall in a small room announces its own dimensions. A warm ivory wall absorbs those dimensions into a warmth that makes the room feel inhabited first and measured second. This is the 18th century's quietest and most radical contribution to the vocabulary of interior color. Let us talk about the rule. The one that every decorating guide, every real estate agent, and every well-meaning friend repeats as though it were a law of physics rather than a fashion of recent decades. Small rooms need light colors. Light colors make rooms feel bigger. Dark colors make rooms feel smaller. I want to tell you that this rule is not wrong exactly, but it is so incomplete as to be practically useless. The full truth is this: light colors make rooms feel bigger when the goal is for the room to feel like more space. Dark colors make rooms feel more intimate when the goal is for the room to feel like a place. And in a small Parisian apartment, in any small apartment built for real human living rather than real estate photography, the goal is always the second one. The room should feel like somewhere, not like the impression of somewhere. Here is something I have noticed over many years of examining Parisian interiors. When you walk into a small room painted in, or de Paris, the warm ochre, your first response is almost never "this room is small." Your first response is warmth. A physical sensation of warmth, as if the room has been heated slightly beyond its actual temperature. This is not imagination. The warm ochre reflects light in the amber-red spectrum in a way that mimics the quality of firelight, of candlelight, of late afternoon sun. The room is not warmer in temperature. It is warmer in atmosphere. And atmosphere is what makes a small room feel inhabitable, not the measurement of its square footage. The 18th century Parisian craftsman who chose ochre for a small salon was not making a decorating decision. He was making a spatial one. I want to describe an experience that I think will be familiar to many of you. You're in a small room. You can feel the walls on all four sides. Not because they are physically close, though they may be, but because you are aware of them. They announce themselves. They remind you, continuously, that the room is small. Now, paint those walls in Boiserie green, the grey green of the 18th century French Salon. Something extraordinary happens. The walls recede. Not because the color is light, it is not, particularly, but because the grey and the green has the quality of shadow, and shadow implies depth. The room no longer feels like a box. It feels like a space that extends slightly beyond what you can see. The walls are still there, but they have stopped announcing themselves. And a room whose walls are quiet is a room that feels, genuinely, larger than a room whose walls insist on being noticed. of all the 18th century colors, Grisaille is the one I find myself recommending most often to people who are uncertain about committing to color. Because its great gift is change. A warm gray wall at 7 in the morning, with the first light coming through the window, reads almost white. At noon, in direct summer sun, it reads a clear pale gray. At 4 in the afternoon, as the light turns golden, it warms toward cream. And in the evening, by lamp or candlelight, it deepens toward something almost putty-colored, almost biscuit. The room changes 4 times in a single day without anyone touching it. In a small apartment, this constant, gentle metamorphosis is not a minor quality. It is the quality that makes you feel, every time you enter the room, that you are seeing it for the first time. That is what keeps a small space from feeling like a cage. There is a specific optical phenomenon that Trianon blue produces in a small room, and I want to describe it carefully because I think it explains why this particular color was Marie-Antoinette's choice for her most personal, most intimate space. Blue, in the cool end of the spectrum, recedes. This is basic color theory. But Trianon blue is not a cool blue. It is a blue with warmth in it, with the gray undertones of weathered stone and the very faint green of Celadon porcelain. This particular complex blue does not simply recede. It creates, in a small room, the impression of sky. Not literally, you are still looking at a wall. But the eye interprets this quality of blue as something it associates with infinite depth. The room opens upward. The ceiling seems higher. The walls seem to continue beyond themselves. And in a small apartment under a 2.8-meter ceiling in the 7th arrondissement, that impression of opening sky is the most beautiful thing a can of paint has ever produced. honest about something that most color guides avoid admitting. Choosing a wall color for a room you have to live in is one of the most psychologically fraught decisions in interior design. Not because it is technically difficult. Paint is reversible, paint is relatively inexpensive, but because the stakes feel high. A wrong color means months of looking at something that doesn't feel right. And not feeling right in a small apartment, where you cannot escape to another room, is genuinely uncomfortable. My recommendation, always for 18th century color in a small apartment, begin with one wall. The primary wall. The wall you see when you walk in. Paint that wall in your chosen color and live with it for 2 weeks before deciding whether to continue. In almost every case, after 2 weeks, you will want to continue. But the 2-week trial gives you permission to begin without the pressure of permanence. The 18th century Parisian interior had specific conventions about which colors belonged in which rooms, and these conventions were not arbitrary. They were based on observation of how natural light enters each room, how the room is used, and what quality of atmosphere serves each function. The Salon, the living space, received Boiserie green or de Paris, colors warm enough to serve the social function of making guests feel welcome and rooms feel inhabited. The chamber, the bedroom, received Trianon blue or warm ivory, colors that quieted the mind without darkening the room, colors that served the function of rest and privacy. The cabinet de travail, the study, received Grisaille, a color that was neutral enough not to distract but warm enough to be genuinely comfortable for long hours of concentrated work. These conventions are, I would argue, as valid today as they were in 1760. One of the most practical questions in this entire conversation is simply, where do I buy this? Because you cannot purchase 18th century pigments from a 21st century hardware store, but you can purchase their closest modern equivalents. And I want to be specific about this because I think vagueness about paint color names is one of the least helpful things a design channel can offer. For or de Paris, the Ochre, Pharaoh and Ball Hay, Benjamin Moore Hawthorne Yellow, HC, For or Sherwin-Williams Antiquity. For Boiserie Green, Pharaoh and Ball Mizzle, Benjamin Moore Aganthus Green, or Little Green French Grey with a green modifier. For Grisaille, Pharaoh and Ball Elephant's Breath, which remains one of the most perfectly calibrated warm grays in commercial paint. For Trianon Blue, Pharaoh and Ball Blue Ground, or Mizzle depending on the dominant tone. For Warm Ivory, Pharaoh and Ball Pointing, or Benjamin Moore White Dove OC, 17. These are starting points, not destinations. Always test in your specific light. There is one more practical detail that is almost always overlooked in discussions of historical paint color, and it matters enormously. The finish, the sheen of the paint. Modern commercial paint comes in flat, eggshell, satin, semi-gloss, and gloss. The 18th century Parisian interior used what we would now call flat or dead flat, paint with no sheen at all. And this was not a technical limitation. It was an aesthetic choice. A flat paint surface absorbs light rather than reflecting it. It creates a matte, slightly chalky quality on the wall that makes colors look deeper, richer, and more complex than the same color in an eggshell or satin finish. When you apply any of the 18th century colors we have discussed in a satin or eggshell finish, you lose approximately 30% of what makes the color beautiful. The correct finish for every one of these colors, in a small Parisian apartment, is flat. Always flat. I want to introduce you to a technique that the 18th century Parisian interior used routinely and that 2026 interior design has rediscovered with considerable enthusiasm: color drenching. Painting not just the walls, but the ceiling, the woodwork, the door frames, and the built-ins all in the same color, or in tones within 2 shades of it. In a small apartment, color drenching does something that painting only the walls cannot achieve. It eliminates the visual interruption at every edge and corner. The room becomes immersive. It stops being a box whose walls have been painted a certain color and starts being an environment of a certain color. The visual boundaries that remind you of the room's size disappear into the color itself. Color drenching in Boiserie Green, in Warm Ochre, or in Grisaille is among the most powerful spatial tools available to anyone working in a compact apartment, and it has been available since approximately 1745. A leading color expert speaking recently about heritage hues said something that I've not been able to stop thinking about. She said, "A good color should not be considered a trend or vintage. A good color stays modern and up to date forever. It becomes part of us, and there's no need to change it all the time. If we follow what is popular rather than what we really like and feel, then we are almost obliged to change the colors as often as the wave of trends comes by." This is the case for 18th century French color precisely. These colors were not chosen by fashion. They were chosen by observation. by craftsmen and their clients who spent their lives in these rooms and understood, through daily experience, what color quality makes a space genuinely good to live in. That knowledge is not historical. It is permanent. There is a particular kind of courage required to paint a small room a strong color. It is a courage that most of us, raised on the gospel of light-colored small spaces, find difficult to summon. And I want to acknowledge that difficulty honestly, because I think it is real and important. The fear is this: if the color is wrong, I'm trapped with it. In a large room, a wrong color recedes with distance. In a small room, it is always close. And close, always close is where color is most powerful. Which is, I would argue, exactly the reason to choose carefully and then choose boldly. A small room with the right color is not just a small room that has been improved. It is a small room that has been transformed. And transformation in a small apartment is always worth the courage it costs. The deepest lesson of 18th century French color is one that our contemporary design culture has largely unlearned. That color is not decoration. It is atmosphere. It is the quality of the air in a room, the feeling of the light, the temperature of the space, not in degrees, but in emotional register. The 18th century craftsman who mixed his pigments was not asking, what color will look nice here? He was asking, what atmosphere does this room need to serve the lives being lived in it? That question, atmosphere first, aesthetic second, is the question that produces the colors we have been discussing. And it is the question that, when applied to your own small apartment, will produce a color that is not just correct but genuinely, permanently, beautifully yours. I want to share with you a quality that I have noticed in every Parisian apartment that has used one of these colors well. The apartment feels as if it belongs to itself, not to a trend, not to a season, not to a moment in the history of interior design that will look dated in 5 years. It feels settled, grown into, as if the color and the space have been in conversation for a long time and have come to a comfortable agreement about how the room should feel. This quality of settledness is one of the most desirable things a small apartment can have, and it is one of the most difficult to achieve with contemporary, fashion-led paint choices. The 18th century colors achieve it almost immediately because they have already been settled for 300 years. They have arrived in your apartment, already knowing what they are. there is something that I find genuinely moving about choosing an 18th century color for a small contemporary apartment. It is an act of connection. You are choosing to be in conversation with everyone who has stood in a room painted in this color before you, with the Parisian craftsmen who mixed the pigment, with the bourgeois family who moved into the freshly painted apartment in 1762, with the generations who succeeded them, who repainted when necessary but always chose the same color because it was right, with the thousands of Parisian apartments that still carry this color on their walls today. In choosing Eau de Paris or Boiserie green or Grisaille for your small apartment in London or Toronto or Sydney, you are doing something that transcends decoration. You are joining a very long, very beautiful, very ongoing conversation about what it means to make a small space beautiful and inhabitable and genuinely, deeply good to be in. Before I give you my final practical guidance, I want to address the single most important thing about choosing any paint color, 18th century or otherwise, for your specific apartment: the light test. Every color we have discussed changes dramatically depending on the quality, direction, and quantity of natural light in the room where it is applied. Eau de Paris in a north-facing London flat will read quite differently from Eau de Paris in a south-facing Toronto apartment at the same latitude. Grisaille in a room with a single small window will look darker and cooler than Grisaille in a room with floor-to-ceiling Haussmann windows. The correct procedure: purchase the largest available tester pot of your chosen color. Paint a section on each wall of the room, because each wall has different light. Observe at 9 a.m., noon, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m., and make your decision based on the time of day when you're most often in that room. That is your room's defining light, and that is the light for which you are choosing. Color drenching and full room applications of deep 18th century colors require preparation that basic repainting does not. I want to be direct about this because I think underestimating the preparation is the most common reason that people apply historical colors and are disappointed with the result. For any of the 5 colors we have discussed applied in a flat finish over previously glossy or semi-gloss paint, sand the existing surface lightly, Apply 1 coat of appropriate primer in a tone close to your chosen color. A warm gray primer for Grisaille, a warm ochre tinted primer for Eau de Paris, and then apply 2 coats of flat finish. The tinted primer is the non-obvious step that most guides omit. It allows the flat paint to achieve full depth in 2 coats rather than requiring 3 or 4. If you are color drenching walls, ceiling, woodwork, consider a professional painter for the ceiling and cornice work. The walls, most people can manage beautifully themselves. One more practical note that I think completes this picture. The 18th century colors we have discussed were never designed to exist alone on a wall. They were designed in relationship to specific materials. Dark walnut and oak furniture, natural linen and wool textiles, brass and iron hardware, ceramic and terracotta objects, aged wood and polished plaster. These materials are not period requirements. They are color relationships. Eau de Paris against a pale gray linen sofa is different from Eau de Paris against a dark walnut bookcase. Both are correct. Both create different rooms. The principle is that these colors are designed for warm, natural materials. They look uncomfortable against synthetic, cold finish, or reflective surfaces. A Boiserie green wall behind an IKEA flat pack in white melamine is not a crime, but it is a waste of the color. Give these colors the materials they deserve, and they will give you a room that deserves to be lived in. I want to end the practical section with something that is not practical at all. It is the most powerful thing I've ever seen a can of paint do. I was in a small apartment in the 11th arrondissement in Paris, 8 square meters, 1 window facing a courtyard. The previous color, the pale gray that had become standard across the neighborhood during a period of rental renovation. Pleasant, inoffensive, slightly soul-destroying in the way that inoffensive things always are. The new color, Boiserie green, dead flat, applied with a tinted primer. 2 coats. The change, when I walked back in after the paint had dried for 48 hours, was not a change in decoration. It was a change in the nature of the space. The 8 square meter apartment had become a room. Not a space measured in square meters. A room with a character, a voice, a reason for existing in exactly the way it existed. The color had done that. Nothing else. We began today with a confession that the rule about small rooms and light colors is incomplete. We end with a proposition that the most important thing you can do for a small apartment is choose a color that makes it feel like it belongs to someone. To you, that is not a fashionable statement. It is a 300-year-old one, made first by the craftsmen of 18th century Paris who mixed ochre and lead white and verdigris and lapis in their workshops in the Faubourg Saint-Antoine and carried it in pails to apartments not so different from yours. Choose one of these colors. Do the light test. Use a tinted primer. Apply it flat. And then stand in your apartment on a winter evening in the lamplight and ask yourself whether it feels right. If it does, and I believe it will, you will have answered a question that has been sitting unanswered in your apartment since the day you moved in. The question of what color your home has always been waiting to be. Merci. Au revoir de Paris.